Hello, welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. Tonight we're speaking with Sandra Koberlein in conjunction with her Cerulean Arts Collective Exhibition on view now through February 9th. Hello, Sandra.
Hi, Mike. Good evening. Good to be here with you. And
Yes,
Tina behind the
likewise.
camera.
So this is your first show with us. So
Yes.
welcome to the gallery.
Thank you. I'm quite honored.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, so my background in the art world, was originally with advertising and graphic design, which I know a lot of artists come from that area. I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh and worked a lot with typesetting and grids and graphs and T-squares and triangles and logo designs. And I did all that because my parents at the time didn't want me to go to become an art teacher because they said I wouldn't be able to make a living. And they weren't wrong, but that was where my passion was. So I went through art school at the Art Institute and did have a short career in advertising and graphic design. I grew up in the Poconos and went back there and did some work for some of the hotels and things. So a lot of my work, you can see there's a graphic element, grids and things like that. Um, but eventually my life, as people, things change and things happen. I ended up in the computer graphic world, and I was working with computers and art related things with NASA and different government institutions, and eventually became a training specialist for the company I worked for. And I would travel around the country and teach people how to use their computers as an art tool. And that sparked my original desire to be a teacher. I loved teaching, I loved working with people. And so eventually I went back to school to become a teacher and spent 16 years in the classroom as a secondary art school teacher and just recently retired. But in that time, I went to an art exhibit that had encaustic, and my memory came back from all my art history classes of what encaustic was, and I was really intrigued to learn more. So I eventually took a class with R&F Handmade Paints in upstate New York and became a certified instructor with their products. And I've been teaching workshops with the encaustic ever since. And now I'm a retired teacher. I have my own studio, and my main medium is encaustic.
So what is it about encaustic that appeals to you?
Oh boy, I think my previous art making experience was a lot of collage and collecting pieces and parts and putting things together and like building with my hands, kind of, if you will. I didn't love the computer as a tool. I liked to kind of put things together, and the encaustic was so intriguing to me because it allowed me to do that if I wanted to. It allowed me to kind of layer things in and glue things together, if you will. And just the natural medium, that it's all natural beeswax and damar resin. So combining the elements and the collage idea with natural material just was really intriguing to me. I think the show that I went to might have been at the Mitchner. I can't remember. I wish I could remember. But the show, I went to see it because it was an altered book show, and it was cookbooks, and they were hanging off the wall. And when you walked into the gallery, the smell of the beeswax was just intoxicating, and I didn't know what I was even smelling. And as I got closer to the books, sculptural books, I realized they were being held together with encaustic paint, encaustic medium, and that was it. That was the turning point of when I decided I needed to learn a lot more. And
I
now, I
mean,
mean, if you look at my work, it has changed a lot, but it's still the same medium. And I think as an educator, I'm more intrigued with the medium as opposed to what the outcome is, if you will. So the experimenting with it and kind of the fact that it's not always the most predictable medium because it's literally painting with molten wax. But that's what I
yeah,
love
so
about
how
it.
does it, maybe it's, if you describe a little bit like what it exactly is and then how you work with it. So
Yeah,
it's actually an ancient technique, correct?
it is. Yes, correct. So if you jog your memory about your art history knowledge, the Egyptians painted the mummies with it before Christ. So it's one of the oldest art mediums around. And some of those mummies still exist today up in New York in the metropolitan. So the medium is beeswax, and it's, in my case, I buy it already prepared from R&F Handmade Paints, but it's beeswax with damar resin, and the resin makes it harden. And I buy it already made, and then I add my own pigments to it. So you're basically painting with molten beeswax.
So you melt the
And
wax and then add the pigment to it?
yes, it's quite a process. I was just thinking about studios processes and studio habits this morning, and the wax takes like a half an hour at least to get molten to paint with it. So I go out to
Hmm.
the studio and I turn the wax on and do a few chores to kind of get ready to paint.
So you heat it up like in a pan?
Yes, I use heat plates, griddles, and like little tins to kind of keep the pigments contained. Or you can paint directly onto the palette. It's it's one of the most diverse paint mediums I've ever worked with, or one of the
Hmm.
my most diverse art mediums I've ever worked with. So there's that another reason why I'm so intrigued about it. From looking at my work, you can see it's pretty abstract, but people actually paint portraits with it. They can be very, very tight and very controlled with tighter, smaller brushes, just like the ancient Egyptians did.
Right, it's
And then I
for
don't know if you
for
remember
propaganda.
your art history with Jasper Johns back in the 19, I think 40, 50s. He was painting with it again, and he kind of brought it back to be a more modern art making material. And I've always loved his work. So once I was reminded of encaustic, I went back and did a lot of relearning and reminding myself of the medium.
And are you working in layers with it?
Yes, lots of layers. It's quite a process, very time consuming, very laborious process of heating up the wax, heating up the in my case, I work on birch panels, which are wood, soft, light wood panels. And you even have to heat them up so that they can be absorbed into layers. The word encaustic itself is a Greek word which means to burn in. So literally every layer that I put on has to be burnt into the previous layer for them to adhere to each other. And in this case, it's again pigmented beeswax. So you're burning in the layers. Everything is always hot and kind of forgiving, kind of. But it's just an amazing, intriguing material that it's endless possibilities. When I teach it, people have always come to the classes with different ideas, and there's really nothing you can't do with it. People do sculpture work with it, they do portraiture work with it. Um, some of the work that Tina's showing right now is done with a stencil, so you can put a stencil down and stencil paint, apply the paint through a stencil. It's a fascinating material.
And that you're working in series.
Yes, this group of work I created just for this exhibit. As most of us in the last few years have had a lot of transition in our lives, a lot of political stuff, a lot of change. We moved to the property we live in now right before COVID, and thankfully that happened because we are very isolated. My husband and I live in the middle of a nature preserve. And so this new work, I'm trying to examine kind of more meditative colors in the landscape. And if you look at my previous work, it's a lot more bold, bigger, brighter mark making. And here I'm trying to, I guess, calm things down and be more aware of my surroundings. I'm fortunate enough that I travel quite frequently. I love to travel. And a lot of these images are, reminiscence of places I've been, dreams, environments that I've been in. And I have lots of little memories about each one of them.
So when you start one, do you know that it's going to be like a 2 or 4 panel composition, or are you like developing that as you go?
Well, I do like to work in a series, as you pointed out earlier. heating up the wax is quite a process. So when I go out to the studio and I'm going to paint for a while because it's quite a process. So I typically prepare 3 to 4 panels at a time to get ready to paint, hoping that maybe 1 or 2 of them are successful paintings. And if not, then I have a few that I can just rework later. But I tend to work in a series just because of the material and how much time it takes to do all of it. Once the colors are melted and I've got all the material prepped, it just makes a lot of sense to keep creating all at one time. And as you can see there in that grouping, the line continues. So oftentimes I'll have the pieces laying out next to each other and continue the line, continue the panel, the palette, and make them connect if the viewer wants to have them connect, or they can obviously stand alone.
And you're working on a wooden panel, yes?
Yeah, these are all the ones we're looking at now are birch panels. They have dimension to them, and the birch is a really light wood, and again, it receives the beeswax very nicely. It's a nice absorbent, structured material, so it's not paper, which would possibly bend and crack, and the paint adheres to it just wonderfully.
And these are a bit bigger in size.
They are. I get pretty, I have a lot of really big brushes and I like to make very gestural marks. As I mentioned, I like to travel. There's maps in this particular series. As you can see, Philadelphia. I grew up if you went somewhere, you actually got the triptych from AAA and you got the map out
Right.
and we didn't have GPS. So I have a lot of maps and pieces and parts and things that I've collected. And again, yeah, as you point out, these pieces are large, and I tend to really enjoy working large. When I have to work smaller for a commission or for a class, and it's been a while since I've done that, so it's a little bit of a struggle. I like the big, loose, gestural mark making.
It must be a very physical process.
It is very trying on your body, very hard on my back. But I do most of my work standing up, and I have a really wonderful workspace where I can lay out all these panels all at one time and work, which I'm very fortunate for. But when the day is done, I am done.
Right.
Some of these pieces you can see have like graphite marks in them. They have horsehair in them, oil paint smudged into the nooks and crannies. Again, there's nothing you can't do with this medium, and that's one of the reasons I love it. And I actually still take classes. I love learning, and I love learning from different instructors and different techniques. So a lot of these pieces that I'm working on now are bits and pieces of things that I've learned from different people.
So it's probably important for an artist to never stop learning.
Right. If you look at my website, one of my favorite quotes is from Michelangelo, where he says, "Ancora impero." I'm not saying it right, but it's basically, "I love learning," and he said that in his 87th year of life. So that's my favorite quote. I think I might be still learning when hopefully, if I make it to 87 years old.
Mhm. So your titles are very evocative. How do you come to them? Are they there in the beginning or they come later or during the process?
They don't come in the beginning, that's for sure. Again, for this group of work, knowing I was working on pieces just for this show, I knew I was retiring. I knew I had a lot of transition in my life. COVID was occurring. We were getting through that. A lot of, family stuff. Life happens. And I just was trying to change my palette and really think about where I live and take advantage of my surroundings. And the titles would come to me like listening to music or reading poetry, looking at other people's artwork and being inspired. But after I put the show together and started to get the paperwork to bring to you and Tina, I realized the names that I came up with really do kind of connect with the transition and hopefully the progress, the change that my life is taking. And I liked the names that I picked.
Yeah, there's a very like kind of calm, soothing quality to the whole show.
Thank you. That was my intention. And at my point in my life, that's my goal, is to calm, serene, serenity, meditative. What's next in my life? I'm fortunate enough to have that choice right now to be able to still paint and choose what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm excited about it.
So these ones are a little different. They're monotype
They
encaustic.
are. Yeah, they're still encaustic, and I have a hot plate, a very large hot metal plate that my husband built for me, and it you can paint right on it. You can paint on it with the encaustic paint, and put paper on it or whatever you want, fabric or whatever you want, and actually make prints. And a monoprint means one. So when you're printing these, it's one of a kind. Each one is unique and different. And these in particular were started out with rice paper and India ink. The big black strong marks are India ink. And then
Hmm.
once that dried is large, big sheets of paper, then I would go to the hot plate and melt my colors, the blues and the greens, and then put the paper onto the hot plate and make the prints. Once it's dried, it's a little bit brittle because of the wax, but I wrap them around birch panels to kind of give them that finished edge.
So there's enough flexibility. You can wrap it around the panel still.
Yes, because it's rice paper and it's not thick layers of paint like the wooden panels. Yes, you can still carefully cut and kind of paste it onto the panels. Yeah, so there you can see the edges. I
Yeah.
like the gallery wrapped edges there.
Mhm. Yeah, it gives them a presence off the wall.
Yeah, thank you. And those big black marks are a lot of my older work was big gestural,
Mhm.
loose mark making, very
Yeah, these
abstract.
are more expressive in terms of the mark.
Hmm. And then that grouping is back to kind of where I live. I live in the middle of a nature preserve, and there's a lot of greenery, kind of wetlands, a lot of blue skies, and right now a little bit of snow. But it's kind of thinking about how lucky I am of where I live and what I get to see every day. And as I mentioned earlier, I could have kept these really tight and really fine lines and really fine details, but that's not how I paint. And if you come to the gallery, you'll see that these are smaller, um, but they're still very abstract. And we do a lot of traveling, so we're in the airplanes a lot, and I love looking out the window and seeing the different colors and the different shapes that you see when you fly over different parts of different geography. So some of the earlier work that you showed with the big rectangles and shapes, kind of that's where I got that from, is the
Yeah,
aerial
that they
view of.
do. Right. They have a topographical quality. I was wondering about that.
Yes, and that it's funny because I don't always think that through when I'm doing it. I'm just creating, but once I look back at it, the topographical view is there. Um, but it also kind of connects with my previous education with graphic design and the T square and all the rectangles.
So speaking of education, you're going to teach a workshop in conjunction with the exhibition
Yeah.
on Saturday, February 8th. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I love teaching, and as I mentioned, now I'm retired from the public school teaching, but I love getting together with people and just sharing knowledge. So this particular workshop will be part of our exhibit there. During the opening, you can come and see the work, and then later, if you wish, you could come and take the workshop. It'll be a couple hours. Each participant will have the opportunity to make a couple of paintings, bring things if you want to add to your paintings, or just come with a blank slate and experiment and just try the medium. Every time I teach a workshop, I'm personally amazed at all the different ideas that people bring and that they have, and what what they want to learn with the material. So I don't really, when I teach a workshop, I don't really have like, this is what you're going to make. It's more of a exploratory. I'll demonstrate the medium. I'll give you lots of inspiration, and then lots of create time, and we'll actually be able to walk over to the gallery and see the work hanging there. And usually people will have questions about the work and how did you do this? How did you do that? And then we can go back into the classroom and talk about it.
So do people need any experience with encaustic?
Nope. Just the willingness to learn.
Well, thanks so much, Sandra. It's a fantastic show.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate this opportunity. You and Tina do a great job there, and I'm honored to be a part of your gallery.
Oh, well, thank you. The feeling's mutual.
Thank you.
So the show is up now. The reception is this Saturday, January 18th from 2 to 5 p.m. So we hope if you're seeing this before the reception, we hope you come down to check it out. The show itself is up through February 9th, and the workshop is on February 8th. So you can also learn all about this on our website, ceruleanarts.com. If you go to the studio page, you can see all Sandra's workshop and everything else, and go to exhibitions to see all the work from the show.
All right.
Well, thanks again for being here, and have a great night.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Tina. See ya.